James Bond. James Bond.
The world's most famous secret agent is back.
We aim to please.
And this time, 007 is facing the ultimate enemy. The man who knows him best.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the classic 1995 James Bond film, Goldeneye. The film is directed by Martin Campbell and we see Pierce Brosnan as James Bond for the first time. We also have Sean Bean, Isabella Scoruppo, Famke Janssen, Jordan Baker, Judi Dench and Robbie Coltrane. Right, okay, this time round, Bond essentially has to take down this weapon that has been stolen by Russian rebels, if you like. It is a new weapon that has the ability to take out all electrical devices, sort of thing. It's a electromagnetic bomb sort of thing. So he's got to kind of go up against the Russians to find this weapon, take it down, but also along the way discovers that his good friend 006, played by Sean Bean, Alec Trevelyan, is at the heart of this scheme. Right, what are my thoughts on Goldeneye? Well, after just watching the two Timothy Dalton films, Living Daylights and License to Kill, and I did mention in certainly one of them reviews, Living Daylights, I think that at the time I wasn't when Timothy Dalton was first cast, I wasn't keen on Timothy Dalton's because I kind of grew up with Roger Moore as Bond, and he was my Bonder certainly. So I never really took to Timothy Dalton when I was younger. Didn't have really a lot of time for his Bond films, if I'm being particularly honest. And after re-watching them, certainly for these reviews that I'm doing, after reviewing all the Bond films in sequence, I enjoyed them far better than I did when I was younger, especially License to Kill. I think that is a very, very solid James Bond film and really did show the strengths of Timothy Dalton. So I can now lament on the fact that he never really got the opportunity to make another Bond film. So when License to Kill finished, sort of thing, he was always lined up to do another Bond film, Timothy Dalton, but it went on for too long. There was some legal issues and stuff, and essentially he wasn't fired or anything. Dalton, he basically stepped aside. At least that's the stories, anyway. And Pierce Brosnan stepped in. Now Pierce Brosnan was the choice anyway before Timothy Dalton was cast. They wanted him back then, but he couldn't do it because of his TV show Remington Steele. So it was made sense, if you like, for Pierce Brosnan to finally get his opportunity as James Bond. And I remember at the time when James Bond was being cast in the mid-90s, the overall outstanding favourite was Pierce Brosnan. So they gave the public what they wanted. He looked like James Bond, very similar to Henry Cavill these days. The outstanding favourite in many people's eyes is Henry Cavill. And I do believe, with Amazon taking creative control, which is worrying personally to me, but they did kind of, was it Jeff Bezos, put a message out there saying, who do you want to see as the next James Bond? And it came back that Henry Cavill was the overwhelming favourite. So let's see if they cast him, shall we? But it's similar at the time. Pierce Brosnan was the outstanding favourite and they cast him. And what they delivered here, because we know Martin Campbell can do outstanding James Bond films. He's proven that. With this film, which is very, very good, and obviously he's continued on with some others, and the Daniel Craig films as well, some of them. And we get here a rock-solid outing for Pierce Brosnan. Arguably, debatably, his best outing as Bond. I'm going to reserve judgment until I've rewatched the others, but I would imagine that most people would debate the fact that this is Pierce Brosnan's best James Bond film, and it's a really solid James Bond film here. It's got, and I've spoken quite a lot when I've been doing these James Bond reviews about certain ingredients that a good Bond film needs to have to make it kind of really work. And this has kind of got them all for the most part. It has obviously a strong James Bond. I think Pierce Brosnan is and was an excellent James Bond. It's got a good villain in Sean Bean. It's got, I think, definitely one of the greatest Bond girls of all time, Famke Janssen as Xenia Onatopp. Cracking name. She's just outstanding. She's absolutely fabulous. Judi Dench as M was a delight. Even then, she was brilliant as M, and obviously continued on to be brilliant as M. The only issue I have with Judi Dench as M, and this again is another debate, is in this film she calls James Bond a dinosaur, a misogynistic dinosaur. So she's just come into the role, and he's been in the role a while. She doesn't necessarily like his methods and stuff. And then when Daniel Craig's cast as Bond, there's a different relationship between them, and he is recruited by her to be James Bond 007, which for me sparks the debate that the 007 James Bond is a title rather than one person. And I wonder if that's the direction they're going to go down going forward, because they've made that an issue, really, like I say, with Judi Dench in this film and with the Daniel Craig ones, and recruiting Daniel Craig's James Bond. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What are your thoughts on that? You know, is 007 a title rather than a person? That's how it feels to me, anyway, and it would make sense as well in a lot of ways too. So yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of things going for it here. This film, the title song, classic title song with Tina Turner. It's got fabulous set pieces, stunts here. I mean, the opening sequence is just superb. The whole opening thing with him and Sean Bean, and then him, you know, jumping after the plane on the motorbike. I mean, it's outrageous stuff, but it's a lot of fun. The sequence with the tank is just, I think, one of the best ever in a Bond film. So it really does have a lot of things going for it. There's also, it makes some missteps, I think, in a sense of, you know, the opening sequence where you see Brosnan for the first time. The Bond music they use for that feels very odd. The sequence at the beginning of the film where you see him racing Famke Janssen's character in his Aston Martin, where they put that really odd chirpy music over it, it's just really weird. It doesn't make sense. The fact that they replace Aston Martin with BMW for all the Brosnan films, I think it's BMWs. I'm right in thinking. Come on, you know, BMW is not quintessentially a James Bond car. So they do make some error of judgments here, but the big decisions I think they really, really get right. Obviously, you know, as I've said, Brosnan was born to be Bond, and I do believe, even in some of the, because the big argument for Brosnan's Bonds is that they started getting more and more elaborate, ridiculous, silly gadgets, over-the-top effects, and it started to become, you know, almost like they were turning him into a superhero almost. So they had to massively ground it for the Daniel Craig era. So yeah, you could argue that the Brosnan era, if you like, you know, it got out of control in regards to all that kind of stuff. But I think his performance as Bond throughout all his movies were consistent. And he was always like, you know, he came on screen and you look at him, you're like, oh yeah, that's Bond. It fits him like a glove playing James Bond. And, you know, I've always thought that, even if I didn't always massively appreciate some of the Bond films he was in. I'm not or I wasn't a fan of his next one, Tomorrow Never Dies, I believe it is. I always found that one a little bit boring, but I'm looking forward to revisiting that because I've not watched that one a great deal. But yeah, obviously this is a solid Bond outing. I think most people that you speak to who are Bond fans would probably put this in the top 10 best Bond films of all time. And I will probably, when I've finished reviewing all these Bond films, I am probably going to do a top 10 list of my favourite Bond films. So obviously that's quite a few weeks away yet. I've got quite a few Bond films to watch yet. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about this Bond film and the Pierce Brosnan era overall. And I look forward to joining you for the next review for James Bond, which will be Tomorrow Never Dies. But before that, of course, stay tuned for the channel for plenty more reviews and content very, very soon.